It was a Monday morning, September 25th, 2023, and the Unjaded Human Design for Entrepreneurs podcast had hit the airwaves. We were doing a fun thing with our listeners where we had Unjaded mugs. We had swag that we gave out, and people were sharing about the podcast. If you were there on day one, I would love to hear from you because you have made this podcast a success over the last year, and I thank you. So we were doing this thing with swag where people were sharing on social media, and we wanted to climb the charts to become one of the best podcasts in Canada, and we did it. We did it because it's a numbers game, right? So just like a best-selling book hits the charts by, playing with the numbers, we did that with this podcast, and it was so much fun. I hope you had fun doing it if you were here, and if you weren't here, we're going to do it again for the anniversary, so don't you worry. Welcome to Unjaded. This is your straight talk, shoot from the hip, wrapped in a little bit of love, Human Design for Business podcast. We talk a lot here about clarifying your message so that you can bring in paying clients with ease. And ease is different from easy. Stick around to find out how we roll here. I'm your host, Vickie Dixon. I am a 2-4 emotional manifesting generator, light on the emotional, and I'm a quad right in human design. In real speak, I am an entrepreneur of 30 plus years. I've had every kind of business there is, and I always say that business is my love language. I can't wait to dive in with you here on the podcast. So welcome to the anniversary episode of the Unjaded podcast, and thank you for being here. Today, I'm going to take you behind the scenes and tell you how and why this podcast came to be and how I come up with content for it and how the flow of the podcast has been over the course of the year. And I'm going to do this in a way that brings in your human design and your need for content creation in your business. Okay, so hold on to your hat. This is going to be a long one. I mean, longer than what we normally go for on this podcast, but full of lots of juicy nuggets that you can use in your own business. So back in 2023, I attended Randy Gage's Tribal Mastermind. It was his signature event at the time. His last one, it was his swan song. There were 13 of us in the room, and I remember getting an email saying to bring your podcasting equipment and somebody would be able to interview him for their podcast. And I thought, I'm not really drawn to podcasts. I have no interest in a podcast. This was, I think, say around mid-July last year. And we get into the room and everybody's talking about podcasting. And Randy is talking about how search is going to audio and how we best get more audio. That needs to be our main focus, is getting more audio out into the ethers as quickly as we can. So there's number one tip for you. If you're not using audio in your business, find a way to be using audio. If you don't want to do a podcast, that's okay. But you could do a vlog. You could do some YouTube videos. You could do screen shares on YouTube if you don't want to have your face on YouTube. I'm going to say not so lovingly and gently, but you may need to get over that if you're in business, okay? Not having your face online. But if it's just not for you, then screen recordings, things like that can be good for your YouTube. But get your voice out into the ethers because search is going to audio. So I kept hearing this over and over again at Tribal. And then there came the day where we had the chance to interview Randy for a podcast. I'm like, I don't even have a podcast. I don't know what I would say. I don't know what I would ask. I don't know, but I could feel my sacral, like I always say, it's being zhuzhed up. I could feel my sacral being zhuzhed up. I was like, do I want a podcast? I was getting lots of things to respond to as a manifesting generator. And I had made 2 friends fairly quickly at Tribal. We're still friends now. We are business buddies and we do so many things together. We talk almost every day, but Lorianne Mirabito has her own podcast called In Demand. It is all about speaking to grow your business. And she and Tessa Brock, who also has a podcast in the mental health field, they were really pushing me to go for this opportunity. And I kind of sat back like my introverted second line self and just let the opportunity pass. But, it wasn't there for me. It wasn't there in my sacral for me to do this interview with Randy. It just didn't feel like the right thing. And I knew it wasn't the right thing. So I came home and I kept feeling this draw towards a podcast. And I kept hearing Randy's voice in my head about audio search. So I came home and within 6 weeks of having those conversations at Tribal, the podcast was born. The Unjaded podcast was born. And just like any birth, it was beautiful. And there was some ugliness at the same time. There was blood and guts as I found my way along. I started recording at the cottage and I had no idea what I was supposed to be doing. I didn't know that you needed a soft room. I had a microphone and headphones, just the little Apple wired headphones. And I thought that was all that you needed. And I was at the cottage, which is all hardwood, and I had a fan running in the upstairs window. And I sent some test runs to Lorianne, and she's like, there's a weird hum there. And here I am thinking some magical editor in the sky is going to be able to take all of this and make it perfect, right? I didn't really get it. So I made a lot of mistakes. There was one episode at the cottage in the very first 5 episodes where I actually am in a blanket fort. I pulled myself, I'm like, okay, I need a soft space. So I sat on one of the beds upstairs. I turned off all of the noise everywhere, had the windows closed, and I put myself into a blanket fort to be able to get some softness around me to be able to record the podcast, because I had hired an editor and she really needed those episodes in order to get them ready, because we were doing a big launch, right? In my world, everything is go big or go home. So if you were there from the beginning, again, thank you. But we launched this in a big way. We launched 7 or 8 episodes on day 1, and we did a lot of hype around it so that we would climb the charts. And I'm going to talk to you about that chart climb in this episode as well. So for me, it's always done is better than perfect. And I know that can drive people crazy. And I know that I make a lot of mistakes, partly why I have such an affinity to third line profiles in human design, especially 3/5s. Because as a manifesting generator, really going where my sacral guides me and being in response to life around me, things don't always go smoothly. And I can kind of wear people out because I have so much energy in me to do the things, right? But done is better than perfect. And I remember hearing in the very beginning that if you're not embarrassed by your first few episodes, then you haven't put it all on the line. So let's just say that everything was on the line. And when I go back, I'm mortified at those first few episodes. I still link to them in blogs and things. And I'm like, oh, sweet Jesus. And you will be too. So when you do something that's scary, when you do something that's really big, that's going to move your business forward, you're going to look back on those first things that you did and be embarrassed that they are the way they are, because they're not going to be polished like they will be later. Just like this episode that I'm doing today. A year from now, I'm going to look back on this and go, oh my gosh, what was I thinking? Because we just keep growing. At least that's what we're here for if we're in business, right? Is that we're just on this personal growth journey and we get to try all of the things and just keep learning and growing as we go along. So just do the thing in your business already, okay? All right, I have this part of me, this gate 27 that nurtures. It is a theme in my design. It is both my vocation and my core wound and gene keys, and it is my conscious Mercury. So it's a big part of how I do the things that I do and how I speak the way that I speak. My entire design is about bringing you along on my journey. I lead by example, often with the egg on my face as things go wrong, and I'm putting that in air quotes because maybe you can relate. And if you've been here on the podcast a while, you've seen that. Where it is beautiful and gets a bit dicey for me is that some of my people, and I thank you, if you are listening here and you are one of these people, from the bottom of my heart, I thank you for being here. Some of my people have been with me for decades because that's what my design does. My design brings you with me on the journey. And some of my people have been with me for 3 decades through every iteration of my business. Whether I was in clothing and accessories, furniture, holistic health, essential oils, frequency therapy, crystals, or human design, you have come with me. And I can fall into this shadow pattern in this gate 27 energy of thinking and feeling like I owe it to you to bring you with me, even when that's no longer where my energy is. So as a generator or a manifesting generator, remember that what the universe wants you to do is play in the energy of what's alive for you right now. As a second line profile in my own human design, it's all about what's alive for me right now. What am I being called to do? Because remember, as a second line, it's about the call. You will have your gifts called from you, and you got to be ready to go when that gift is called out. And then as a quad right in my own design, it's about what people are pulling out of me. So I've had a winding road to refining my niche, and the podcast has been a huge kind of mirror for me. When I've looked back on my episodes, I'm like, whoa, I can see the clarity and the refining in my niche as I've gone along. So I want to unpack that with you because I know that if you're here and you're listening and you have a business, this niche conversation can be a hard thing to wrap your head around. And especially in the human design space, right? We hear that human design is the niche and it can be in the beginning, but I'm going to walk you through how it can feel to define your niche and why you're going to want to define your niche as you go along. It's coming. If you're tired of being a slave to the algorithm and you're really ready to claim your place in the online space, then this message is for you. I'm getting ready to launch another live round of the Content by Design course, where you learn to leverage your human design so that you can create content that draws your ideal clients to you with ease, without feeling yucky or salesy, and definitely without being a slave to the algorithm. We work on blog posts and email sequences and podcast episodes and social media posts and all of the things.
because no matter what you're creating, it needs to come from who you are here to be, what you're here to say, how you're here to say it, and who you're here to say it to. Get on the wait list. The link is in the show notes for you.
So in the beginning, my niche was broad. I still had my holistic health practice. I had a bricks and mortar store that had the great fortune of opening on March 7th, 2020, really bad timing. And side note on that, I should do an episode on that one time. I knew that that was not the thing for me. I remember sitting there signing the papers and hoping someone else would back out because I didn't feel like I could back out, even though I wanted to. So that's something about the emotional authority piece that we'll dive into another day. But in the beginning, my niche was broad. It was human design for life, relationships, and the business you were made for. And because I was still serving in my holistic health practice and I had a crystal business, I still had a lot of my people who've been with me forever, and I wanted to bring them along because my design brings something new into the community and brings people along in that new thing. And with that gate 27 in such a prominent place, there can be a lot of like, oh, I just really want to nurture you and keep you with me. The thing is, I knew in my soul, even back then, that it was business for me. I knew that it wasn't about relationships. I knew that it wasn't about life. Even though I love doing like relationship charts and things like that, it was all about business. I've been a successful entrepreneur for over 3 decades. I have built 4 multiple 6-figure businesses on my own and 1 in partnership. But when I was starting out, a well-known teacher in our space looked at my design in a group meeting and she said that I really wasn't built for business. And it was so early in my human design journey that I believed her and I felt like a fraud. So I tried to be about something else, even though this inner calling, this second line being called out, was always being called out for business. And if you look back on the last year of the podcast, you'll see that I'm going further and further and further into business because that's what I'm made for. Like I can look at those first episodes. I can look at, by the time this airs, we will be almost at 100 episodes, if not at 100. And I can look over the course of that year and go, wow, my soul just kept calling me further into my niche. So for me, thankfully, another reader very, very early in my human design journey was like looking at my chart and she's like, WTF else are you here for if you were not here for business? That makes no sense. All I see is business when I look at your design. And here's the lesson that I want you to take from that as you listen to this podcast. You get to do what lights you up. You get to do what you're called to do. Stop looking for answers outside of yourself and just do the damn thing already. Because done is better than perfect. No matter what your human design, done is better than perfect. And I heard it said that all business is third line. If you're not super familiar with human design, third line is all about trial and error. It is bumping into life and having life bump into you. It is running fast and breaking things and figuring out how to do it better, but only through experience. I'm trying to think who says, I've been listening to their podcast a lot lately. Oh, James Wedmore always says success is a crappy teacher. You are going to learn more. I am going to learn more when we fail than we are when we succeed. So done is always better than perfect in your business. And remember that when you're listening to human design readers or human design teachers or astrologers or whatever the case may be, is that it's all interpretation. It's science and it's art. So you take from your design, you're the one living your life. So you get to take from it what you want and leave the rest. When I'm reading a design, I'm going to look into your design and I'm going to see the pieces that are how you do absolutely everything that you do. I'm also going to see at a glance your shadows and the way you'll trip yourself up because you've been told that there's something wrong with you your whole life in those areas. Those are your greatest gifts and they're an integral part of finding your purpose. Now, someone else might look at your design and see something entirely different, and that's okay. Nobody has all of the answers for you except for you. The answers are inside of you. Understanding the nuances of your human design allows you to fully step into your gifts so that you can heal for yourself, for the generations to come, and you can have the impact that you're here to have because we need you standing in all of you to have the impact that you're here to have. So back to niching down over the course of a year. There's something to be said for the fact that your niche finds you. That's really a common thing that I hear in the human design space, and it's partly true. And I believe that you have to be wide open to following the breadcrumbs from the universe. So I feel like a lot of people in this space are saying, I'm not going to choose my niche. My niche is going to find me. And then they just go about like posting all of this random stuff about you. Like they're not even trying to bring it in for their people. They're not following the signs when they get 6 relationship readings in a row that maybe they should be in relationships. They're not following the signs that, oh my gosh, I'm always talking about raising your children in a reading? Why am I not talking about parenting in my social media? Why am I not claiming that space? So what we get to do as we're deciding on our niche is that we get to be wide open and actively inviting the universe to play with us. The universe wants to play with you. I know that this episode is going to be a little bit longer, but I want to tell you this story because it was the biggest breadcrumb that I had in my business journey with human design. And I knew that my sacral was guiding me. I always picture my sacral as if it's like a rope guiding me around the planet to the opportunities that are right for me. So I work with Bodygraph Chart as their community manager and a bunch of other things. And I had registered last November for a copywriting course because I'm like, okay, I've been doing this forever. I want the actual certification. Channel 4816, hello. And I had gone through this free challenge and I had made up my mind that I wasn't going to buy the course. And then I sat with it over the course of a couple of weeks and I'm like, you know what? I'm really being drawn to this. I really think that this is what I want to do. And so I applied for this course and within a couple of days, I got 4 emails inviting me to apply to be a copywriter. And I'm like, okay, universe, thank you. I'm on the right track. I get it. I hear you. Okay, well, I'm good. So throughout the journey on the podcast, I've refined my niche more and more and more as I've gone along, and you will too. You don't need to know your niche 100% today. It's okay if you don't know your niche 100% today, but please don't fall into this thing I see where because people don't know their niches, they push back and they permeate this belief that because it's not an easy thing to do to choose a niche, because it's a little bit scary to plant your flag, because you're going to leave people behind, that you're just not going to have a niche. The more niche you are, the more money you will make. And that is a business of fact that you can take to the bank. You show me anyone who's making bank in their business, and I guarantee you they have a defined niche. Because we pay for specialists, right? We don't pay for generalists. Period. The end. The more niche you are, the easier it is for your audience to find you so that you can grow. The more niche you are, the easier it is for the algorithm to be the matchmaker that it wants to be that brings your content to your ideal client. The more niche you are, the easier it is for you to create that content because you have a really narrow list of topics, which, right now you may be listening to this and think, gosh, that sounds limiting, but it's actually the opposite. It is so easy when you know your niche to know the content that niche needs because you're talking about the same things over and over and over again. The content that's going to convert for you is the stuff that you're sick to death of saying, and you think your people can't stand hearing anymore, but that's not true. They need to hear it over and over and over again. Again, look at any of the people who are big, big, big brands. They have a narrow niche and they say a lot of the same things. And what I find in working with people with their content is that, I can have someone in a content audit and I tell them the things that need to be done just as a consultant would, right? I'm not doing the work with you. I'm just telling you what needs to be done. And then they send it to me and they're like, look, I did it. And I'm like, oh, okay. But there's still about 16 different things that need to be done that aren't there. And that's because they only heard like 10% of what I said. So your people need to hear your message over and over and over again. One final thing about finding your niche. Let it be easy and fun. Allow it to develop over time and ask the universe to show you the signs and then do the work as you go along. This podcast has been a year-long journey of love, and I thank you from the bottom of my heart for being here with me. I truly appreciate you. I want to walk you through just some stats of what we have done in the past year because I think it's absolutely amazing. So on day 1, September 25th, 2023, we hit number 54 on the Canadian charts. We were in the top 100, which is crazy, crazy, crazy. So great. I meant to get the statistics for you, but there are over 3 million podcasts. Over 3 million podcasts. Do you know what a big deal it is that we got to number 54 on day 1? Thank you, thank you, thank you. Some stats of where we are at today. Globally, Unjaded is now number 13,395 on the global podcast charts out of over 3 million. We are number 1,719 in the education category globally. We are number 127 in the leadership category for Australia. Thank you, Australians. We are number 45 for Canadians in the entrepreneurial space. That's crazy. Number 59 in Canada for education and number 33 for self-improvement. So we are making great headway with bringing human design to the world. And it's all because you are here every single week listening in. So I thank you. I'm also going to put the link for my audio recorder in the show notes here so that if you have a question that you would love me to answer about your human design and or your business, send me that question because it gives me something to respond to. And I feel like those episodes are magical. Another thing that would be fun is to share our favorite episodes with each other. So I'm going to tell you that still to date, my very favorite episode that I have done in the year is my overview of Stephen King's chart. I will pop that into the show notes for you. I found it fascinating to look at his human design and how he's using it. But let me know what you would like to hear on the podcast as well. Okay, now I'd like to ask you a favor since you are a listener of the podcast. I'm about to rename the show to reflect this niching down that I've done into the business and human design space, specifically content creation. So would you help me come up with a name if I do a fun contest? Would you help me with that? You're so great at helping me with all of this marketing stuff, and I would love your input. I'm going to give away a full business human design reading for the person who comes up with the name or tagline that I use. And I would love us to have so much fun with it. I'll be posting ideas on social. I don't have to share your name to post it on social if you don't want it shared, but we're just going to make this so much fun. So I put a link to a Google document in the show notes where you can add your ideas for a name or a tagline. Now, I'd love to say that I would like to keep Unjaded in there because it means something to me. It was a specific moment in time, a really beautiful moment where I knew that that name had to be in there. So I would like to keep Unjaded in there somewhere. So maybe coming up with a new tagline, and how this conversation came up for me or how this idea came up for me was that I was searching for a brand strategist because I'm in the middle of a brand refresh. You never know, manifesting generator, by the time this airs, I might be finished. But I was looking for a brand strategist and I found a podcast and it was all about brand strategy. And then I looked through her topics and hardly any of it was about brand strategy. And I was like searching for information about brand strategy. And I thought, I wonder if that's what people feel about my podcast. I wonder if they see human design for life, relationships, and business, and then they get in and it's mostly content creation. They're like, oh, that's kind of disappointing. And none of us wants people to be disappointed, right? I want to be really clear about what this podcast offers. And sometimes it's hard to see our own stuff. Sometimes it's hard to understand what it is that we offer people, what it is that we provide for people, especially as a second line and a quad right in my design. Again, I'm here for the call. So I would love it if you would call out of me what you hear in this podcast and give me some of your ideas for a tagline or a name. Again, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for being here. Thank you for putting up with my manifesting generator craziness and my sometimes rambly way of getting to the point with my abstract circuitry. You rock. And it is my deepest desire for you to rock the world in your business and change something.